And thank you to everyone. Each and every person in this room makes me so proud to be a part of our School of Information Science, our community. Each person in this room makes important differences each and every day and in so many lives. And it is truly an honor and privilege to introduce for you this evening Dr. Linda Lucas Walling. Dr. Walling has a legacy, and one that will continue endlessly. Those of you who have had the honor and privilege of knowing Dr. Walling and working with her know the kind of person she is. Mrs. Olsgaard, it is such an honor to have you with us this evening, and I want you to know how appreciative we are of you and Dr. Olsgaard, and know that Dr. Walling epitomizes so many of the characteristics that we also saw in Dr. Olsgaard. His honor and his integrity, and they both have such an incredible commitment to making important differences in the lives of other people. I'm reminded of many family dinners with my grandfather, who would have celebrated his 98th birthday today. And at dinner every night, he would say, "What went well in the day?" And then he would say, "What did you do for someone else today?" And I can say unequivocally that Linda Lucas Walling is someone who has never had a day in which she did not make a difference for so many. Her journey began on a farm in Iowa with a beautiful family, including her mother, father, beloved brother, and a 4-H cow they shared, half pint. And through that life, the farm life, Dr. Walling learned work ethic, honor, integrity, and perseverance. And in the face of challenges, she always found a way. In the face of unkindness, she responded with kindness and determination. You see, she had a vision for a world where everyone is treated with kindness, where everyone is respected and valued, and that everyone has abilities that they can share with the world. Each and every human being is different. All of us face challenges. Some are visible, some are not, but none of us are exempt from facing challenges. What Dr. Walling has lived, continues to live, and inspires in every person in this room, every person who is a part of our community, is integrity, action, and hard work. So what did we do for someone else today? I hope we never again, after tonight, have a day where we don't consider at the end of the day, What did I do for someone else? How did I make a difference? Dr. Walling's legacy is one that will be remembered and will continue forever. She had and has continued a mission and a vision as a world-renowned researcher, a groundbreaking scholar. She would be too humble to say this, but in our field, she's the first scholar to study accessibility, and particularly accessibility for people with characteristics that are labeled as being disabilities. But instead, Dr. Walling takes the approach of accessing abilities. What can we do to lend a helping hand, to be a part of someone's journey, and to help them share their abilities with the world? Dr. Walling is one of the hardest workers I've ever known. After her childhood in Illinois, she accomplished a BA from the University of Northern Iowa, a Master's of Librarianship from the University of Washington, a Ph.D. from the University of Illinois. In 1985, she wrote The Disabled Child in the Library, which went on to receive an award in 1985 from the President's Committee on Employment of the Handicapped. In 2001, she was awarded the Exceptional Service Award from the Association of Specialized and Cooperative Library Agencies. Her legacy continues. She began our publications and research in accessibility and in inclusion in all forms. And she continues that legacy today in inspiring that and mentoring and fostering so many librarians and scholars. And I can say that to this day, when I see anyone in our community, how's Dr. Walling? Where is she? I saw her on Facebook. She came and gave a professional development session at the state library. She joined us virtually at the American Association of Library and Information Science Education. She's a goer, she's a mover, a shaker, an achiever. And most of all, she is a giver. She gives her life to making other lives accessible and to enabling abilities. So Dr. Walling, thank you for your incredible legacy. Thank you for being you. Like so many of your students, colleagues, and friends would say, but I'm saying it from the depths of my heart. You changed my life, and I wouldn't be here without you. Thank you.
Yeah, the paper one.
Yeah, it's coming. You want to back up so the water can go.
It's a delight to see so many familiar faces here tonight and to meet new people that I hadn't met before. I really appreciate your coming. First of all, I want to thank Director McCartan and the school for this honor. I'm particularly pleased to have the Olsgaard Award because John was a good friend and colleague. I also want to thank Dean Reichert for the support he's given me. Also, Dr. Copeland for continuing my strong concerns about meeting all community information needs and for diversity in the broadest sense. I also want to thank my longtime colleagues, Chuck Curran and Dan Barron, for all I learned from them. Dan, as you may know, is the person responsible for the fact that we were first in the nation to teach our master's program via first closed circuit and then satellite beginning in 1982. Dan was our idea man who kept pushing us forward. He worked hard to get the Augusta Baker Chair successfully approved, along with Cocky's Reading Express. Chuck was our philosopher, the one who sat back and looked at what we were doing and asked penetrating, important questions that kept our feet tied firmly to the ground. We, along with Bob Williams and John Olsgaard, operated as a team for almost 30 years. We take great pride in the successes of our students, and I'm pleased to be aware of many recent alums who are having successful careers. I thought I'd start tonight with a tongue-in-cheek poem I wrote in the 90s about life as a professor in Davis College, a bustling, busy, well-loved place back then. When I visit now, I'm glad to know that Cocky guides Cocky's ice. I suspect that even with changed technology, the current faculty can relate to some of this. I called the poem Prof in Control on Tuesday. Professors have cushy jobs, I hear. A little teaching, then the times you're on. You're in control. I'm in control. I guess I'll go to Litchfield Saturday. Teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday with office hours, of course. 190 students, 3 hours plus a day on listservs and email. I'll email early morning when the traffic's slow. Mainframe's down each morning, scheduled maintenance. Oh well, there's late at night. The Monday class is lost. Must scrap my notes, create some new ones. Start again, schedule catch-up sessions. Maybe one-on-one. Wednesday, 80 papers due. I'll grade Thursday. Voicemail's full. It's telephone tag time again. My GA called in sick. It's me to photocopy, input, make the tricks. UPS just brought a box. Page proofs I thought I'd get a month ago. They want them back next week. Next week, it's Chicago. Give a paper cutting edge. Call London to be sure it is. Calculate the time zones. Need to talk real time, no email tag. 500 pages. One last chance before the book comes out. Why is my GA sick this week? Oh, well, there's Thursday. It will be a busy day. What? The dean's called a meeting Thursday, a long one. Office door opens slowly. Cautious student, shaky voice, tear stains. I know it's not your office hours, but do you have some time? I do. Come in, what's happened? Grab the tissues, clear a chair, all else moves to hold. Cushy job, I'm in control, you jest. Maybe Litchfield next semester. I arrived at Carolina at just the right time. The Rehabilitation Act had been passed in 1973, and what is now called IDEA had been passed in 1975. It was to be implemented in 1978. The college had in place what I believe was the first special populations course in the country. When I interviewed in 1977, Bill Summers, the dean at that time, asked if I would like to teach that course, and I said yes. In the 1970s and 80s, South Carolina prison libraries were considered a model for other states. At that time, South Carolina prison librarians were required to have school library certification, and the state library had an institutional consultant. Thus, the course had 3 units: prison librarianship, disabilities, and institutional libraries, specifically the institutions for those who are mentally disabled and for those who are mentally ill. About 1990, though, the Department of Corrections hired a commissioner whose focus was punishment, not rehabilitation. The department no longer required certification, and prison libraries essentially collapsed. At about the same time, the deinstitutionalization movement came to Carolina, and libraries in developmental and mental health centers were de-emphasized. The course evolved into what is now the Diversity in Libraries course. As I recall, in that evolution, I first added issues for Blacks, gay, lesbian, and ESL. I just kept adding topics: Latinos, Native Americans, and interests from my days as a high school librarian in Montana and North Dakota, and from my friendship with a man who was working with the Catawbas in successfully negotiating their claim to the city of Rock Hill. Also, older adults and religious minorities. One of the last topics I added was evangelical Christians, when one of my evangelical students asked, after other students had attacked her on the college listserv, "Why does intellectual freedom apply to everyone but me?" To which I answered, "It does apply to you. Yes, we all are part of the great diversity in this country, and we all have information needs and the right to fulfill those needs." I look at diversity through the lens of universal access, and community through the lens of the clientele the library or archive, et cetera, was established to serve. In my mind, universal access does not apply only to people with disabilities. We all experience barriers to obtaining the information we need, whether those barriers are illiteracy, racism, homophobia, misogyny, legal restrictions, lack of computer access or skills, disability-related, or a whole string of others. My belief is that the primary goal for a librarian, for anyone working with information, is to assure that the people in the communities they serve can obtain the accurate, reliable information they need. To successfully achieve that goal, assuring universal access is a necessity. Libraries need collections and services that present as many points of view as possible. Collections and services need to be accessible in a variety of formats so that people who can't read or can read only other languages, for example, can obtain information. Same for people who fumble with computer literacy. Our goal, whether on the library side or the information science side, even the J School side, needs to be to help members of the communities we serve break through the barriers to accurate, reliable information as much as possible with as little bias as possible. This requires serious attention to the demographics of the community and involvement with the community. Listen and learn should be basic. Are you designing a web page? Be sure to follow the most up-to-date W3 guidelines. Are you seeking to provide accurate, reliable medical information? Be sure to provide that information with attention to the particular needs in the community. Blacks, Latinos, Asians, the LGBTQ+ community, older adults, people with disabilities. Does your clientele include people who speak a language other than English? Work to be sure that information is available in a language they understand. With always limited resources, all of this requires plenty of creativity. Two things that frustrated those of us in ALA who worked with diversity issues were librarian reluctance to include members of target audiences on advisory committees, along with insufficient librarian involvement in the target communities. Both lead to potentially costly and embarrassing mistakes. A couple of examples. Public library seeking to attract Latinos in the community prepared publicity in Spanish. A good idea, but the translator they chose used a form of Spanish that was offensive to the local Latino community. The librarians wrongly assumed that Spanish was the same Spanish in all Spanish-speaking communities and that all Latino countries like each other. Second example. In very recent years, the architect for Queens Public Library Hunters Point made major accessibility errors in the design of the children's area in their new library. Recently, a lawsuit was settled to correct the problems to the tune of $4.6 million. Using an architect who understood accessible design and involving parents or other adults who understood accessibility needs could have saved embarrassment, bad publicity, and millions of dollars. Some information like corporate secrets, copyright issues, and HIPAA may be rightly restricted, but information is too often over-restricted. People often need help to get through unnecessary barriers. And of course, the world is now flooded with misinformation and the intrusion of AI. Plus the challenges of social media, internet silos, and information echo chambers. Privacy is a major concern. I taught reference, now information services courses, and the major focus was learning to evaluate information. That becomes even more critical these days and in the days ahead. It's obvious that people need help navigating through all the barriers to information that they face. To me, universal access means that everyone has access to accurate information on the topics they need, whether the information is medical, financial, business, legal, governmental, inspirational, or recreational. Challenges to breaking down barriers to information are increasing rather than decreasing. We work to break them down anyway. So, switching to how I came to have a career focused on breaking barriers because of diversity or disability. I have cerebral palsy, and my brother had what I think would now be diagnosed as learning disabilities. So I've been aware all my life of barriers society sets for people with disabilities. My parents were naturally curious about people who were different in some way from themselves. They lived all their lives on farms in rural southwest Iowa. They made sure my brother and I were exposed to a wide range of people and experiences. During my childhood, they opened our home, which had no indoor plumbing and was on a mud road, to house guests from China and the Philippines. In 1946, they took us on a car trip through the Jim Crow South. At age 6, I saw the segregated facilities. In one town, we wound up on the black side of a restaurant because the white side was overcrowded. My parents realized their mistake, but chose to stay. They had no problem with integrating the restaurant, but I'm sure the servers were nervous. They were courteous and quick to serve us and get us out of there as soon as possible. We were obviously clueless Northerners. It was only in the 1960s that I fully realized how different things would have been if we'd been a Black family accidentally going into the white side of a restaurant. But of course, a Black family would never have made that mistake. That trip made a big impression on my 6-year-old self. I was ready to focus on Brown versus the Board of Education in my high school years and on the civil rights movement as it developed. Along the way, I'm pleased to say that in my college years, I had the thrill of hearing Dr. King speak at a conference. Little did I know that I'd spend most of my life in the South, and that among my friends would be one whose home was the site of a cross burning because her family was involved in the Clarendon County piece of the school desegregation lawsuit. When I arrived at Carolina in 1977, I was primed for learning more about the South and Southerners. I've learned a great deal from my students who were descended from slaves, my students who were descended from plantation owners, and my students who were descended from both. And I'm still learning. Because of my assignment to teach the special populations course, I was also primed to learn more about disabilities I was unfamiliar with. With the implementation of IDEA in 1978, it was important that school librarians be prepared to work with disabled children. 3 of us on the faculty decided to develop an all-day workshop on that topic, which we did. We were surprised to discover that there was very little published on the subject. Another faculty member overheard us talking. She was a scout for Libraries Unlimited and suggested we write a book. 2 of us did exactly that by writing The Disabled Child in the Library, which was the first book that covered library services for disabled children in both school and public libraries. We were honored to have the book receive an award from the President's Committee on Employment of the Physically Handicapped in 1985. It's important to understand that reading still is fundamental. Even today, with such an array of formats for presenting information, there is a need to be able to read. Learning to read is a process that best begins with newborns as they are read to. There's a focus today on phonics as the way to learn to read, but in truth, there's no one approach that works for all children. Phonics is not very useful for children who are deaf, for example. Not being able to read is a serious barrier to gaining information. School and public library children's librarians can and should be familiar with the basics of learning to read so that they can incorporate the basics into sharing books with children. Much attention these days is given to children with dyslexia and other neurodevelopmental disabilities. It's recognized that many children who were and still are called reluctant readers have undiagnosed reading disabilities. Early on, I was frustrated that school and children's librarians said they couldn't serve disabled children because they couldn't afford special format materials. I was fortunate to know Coy Hunsaker, the children's outreach librarian for Cincinnati Hamilton County Library in Ohio. Coy had been sharing books and stories with disabled children for nearly 20 years. She assured me that the children are just like any other children. They want the same kinds of things as all children, and most of them don't need special formats. Books can be selected for them from the regular shelves. I started developing criteria for librarians, parents, anyone who works with children who are disabled, so they can use them in selecting books from a children's or school library collection. Later in the 1990s, I developed a course specifically on using the criteria and on services and programming for disabled children. I'm glad that both the children's course and the diversity course are still being taught, and that I get to give occasional guest lectures. The criteria as they stand now address birth through high school ages. They're available on the Linda Lucas Walling Collection for Disabled Children webpage. And my hope is that we will soon develop instructional videos that will help anyone who's involved with the children to select books for them. The collection webpage also includes links to resources for librarians, parents, and others. You can, of course, locate the webpage by Googling the name of the collection. On the webpage, there are lists of basic criteria for children with reading disabilities, that is, dyslexia, blindness, and deafness. Also for children and adults with intellectual disabilities, children with autism or other neurodevelopmental disabilities, and children with motor disabilities. Many children have coexisting conditions, so attention must always be given to the combinations of abilities and challenges each child experiences. There's a physical collection available locally. It's housed in the South Carolina Center for Community Literacy. It includes books for children and teens that might be found in any library. Students and others can use the criteria to practice their selection skills with a particular child in mind. The criteria can be grouped in 3 categories: illustrations, book design, and story content. Any good book for children can be good for a child with a disability, but some may present challenges. Other books may have features that make them easily accessible. Still others will include both easy access and challenges. All of the books may be valuable with appropriate adaptations. Children are individuals, and disabilities apply individually. The criteria should not be used to the exclusion of observing what a child responds to. To illustrate, I'll go through the criteria for selecting picture books for children with reading disabilities. These children may have low vision or other visual challenges. They may have dyslexia, or they may be deaf. As to story content, unlike children with intellectual disabilities, children with reading disabilities can enjoy books with multiple characters and complex plots. Children with intellectual disabilities need a single main character and a straightforward storyline. For example, The Snowy Day could be enjoyed, but Blueberries for Sal, with its multiple characters and complex plot, probably could not. Children with low vision need simple, clear, uncluttered, well-organized illustrations. Strong, heavy outlines help them distinguish the illustration from its background. Vivid, contrasting colors are important unless the child has color blindness. Of course, children with dyslexia or deafness can enjoy illustrations that are complex, not outlined, and with less contrast. Book design is a critical factor for all children. The type font should have easily distinguished shapes, and print should be large and bold. The same font should be used throughout the story. Some commonly used accessible fonts are Arial, Verdana, and Calibri. There should be adequate white space between letters and lines, and strong contrast with the background. Lines of print should march across the page parallel to the bottom of the page. It's important that there should be minimum glare on the page. By the way, these same criteria can be used for teens and adults who have reading disabilities. In conclusion, I'll say that my professional passion was always to assure that the students I taught were prepared to recognize and meet the information needs of the people they served. I hope and trust that whether you are faculty, an alum, or a current student, you share that passion. The present is challenging, and the future likely will be even more challenging. Please commit to breaking barriers anyway. I'll end with this, another poem I wrote several years ago. I am the center of my web. You are the center of yours. Infinite centers, infinite webs. Touching, interweaving, constantly shifting patterns. Always connected, always connecting. Thanks again for the honor you've given me.
Thank you, Dr. Walling. And to continue our evening, we have a video that we have created with much appreciation and support of our Dean, Dr. Tom Reichert, and our Director, as well as the support of Randy Covington and so many others who were part of creating an educational video about the Linda Lucas Walling Collection for disabled children, making learning accessible for everyone.
Hi, my name is Susan Audet, and like a lot of people in life, I've had to overcome some pretty tough challenges and to think creatively to be able to reach the possibilities in my life. A car accident when I was in college left me paralyzed. I would go on to become a television news anchor. I was determined, yes, but I also needed people to walk beside me, to open the door, so to speak, to help me reach my goals and to think creatively with me. All this to say, to help children achieve their potential and to reach their possibilities, whatever they may be, it often takes an educator who can connect and engage with them. That's where Thornwell Charter School in Clinton, South Carolina comes in. We went there recently to meet an educator and librarian who is engaging with her students to open the world to them in very creative ways.
This one's called Head Charleston. The true story of the Jenkins Orphan Band. Have you ever been to Charleston? You've been to Charleston, haven't you? A lot. I know, a lot.
Her name is Vicki Culbertson. Most people call her Mrs. Cubby. And this is a small special education class.
Their own kind of rhythm, and they call their music rag.
The book is about orphans in Charleston, South Carolina, ragtime music, and a dance they created that swept the country.
The people in New York, they heard that band, they loved that raggedy music. And best of all, they would shout, "Hey, Charleston," because they only knew the boys came from Charleston. Give us some rag.
Mrs. Cubby makes reading exciting, and students are expected to learn something new every day.
Hey, Charleston, give me some rag. Wanna see them? Wanna see them dance? Okay, let's see if we can get it done. See him twisting, flapping his arms, knocking his knees. And what's that dance called? Charleston.
She sees children for who they are, not for labels that society may give them.
Clayton Copeland is an expert on teaching children she describes as differently able. Copeland says Mrs. Cubby does so many things right, including
Selecting things that matter to them so that they become engaged and have that passion for what they are learning and how they are growing.
in Columbia at the University of South Carolina. Copeland is on the faculty of the School of Information Science and a champion for providing access to information for children with disabilities. She's proud of the iSchool's efforts, including a curated collection of books that helps educators evaluate and select materials that hold the attention and spark the imaginations of their students. The collection is named for Professor Emeritus Linda Lucas Walling, a pioneer in helping children overcome barriers.
They have talents, they have abilities. All we have to do is to discover what their abilities are and then help them to achieve as much as they can.
Back at the Thornwell School, that is exactly what Vicki Culbertson is doing, and it can have a big impact.
Okay, I see it.
Just ask Clayton Copeland. She was in the first grade at Thornwell. A child who used a walker, she remembers a conversation with the school librarian, Ellen Heflin Ramsey, that shaped her life and career.
And one day I came in and I wasn't smiling. And she said, "Clayton, that's so unusual. I don't think I've ever seen you not smiling. What's up?" And I said, "Well, I figured out how to climb the monkey bars, but I can't quite master getting back down yet. I gotta figure that out." And she said, "Oh, Clayton, do you know where you can do anything? And I mean absolutely anything you can imagine? Do you know where any child, any person can do anything they dream? In a book."
The power and wonder of books and the importance of educators who are determined to reach their students, including those who are differently abled. That's why the work of Linda Lucas Walling and others like Vicki Culbertson is so